Ready to go.
Good evening, everybody. Today is Tuesday, May 29th, 2018. Welcome to the regular session of the Town Council meeting. We'd like to ask everybody to stand, please, and join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dale, if you could do the roll call, please.
Council President Healy.
Here.
Council Vice President Collins.
Here.
Councilman DeCruz.
Here.
Councilwoman Gledhill.
Here.
Councilman Veely.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4 would be the approval of the minutes from A, the work sessions of May 7th and 14th, and B, the regular session of May 14th, 2018.
Motion to approve items 4A and B.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions? Seeing none. Item number 5, do I have a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item number 6 under licenses. 6A is a resolution granting a holiday sales license to Main Street Candy, LLC, 324 Main Street by Wayne Cahoon of 79 Columbia Street. Is anybody here to speak to this application? Please just state your name for the record. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing?
I'm going to open up a candy store with a particular penny candy, and we're also going to be working with Sweeners to have some of their chocolates in. With the appeal of Brickley's, bringing so many people downtown, it seems kind of a natural fit for that corner to have a product like this.
Are you going to be open year-round?
I'm going to be on the Brickley's calendar, I will tell you. And we'll probably try to extend into Christmas. But the bins that we use are gravity bins, and we'll have over 200 selections. I'm going to need some time to clean those yearly. So that'll be done in the months of January, February, and March, probably.
Nice.
You're going to fit right in down there. That's going to be awesome.
I think so, too.
My kids have already peered in the windows asking what it is. I'm like, you can never go. No, we're very excited.
All right. What are the hours of operation that you'll have?
It'll be roughly 12 noontime till 9 or when the lines die down at Brickley's.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions or comments here at the table?
No, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 6A.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Luck.
you. Good luck. Moving on to item 6B, it's a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct a portion of the second annual Jeeps Meet Motorcycles Enrolling for Homes ride in South Kingstown, which will be held on July 28th of this year, beginning at 10:30, to Habitat for Humanity of West Bay and Northern Rhode Island, subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town, issuance of a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured for this event, and the amount specified by the finance director, and approval by the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. Proceeds will benefit their Veterans Build program. Amy Gates is the applicant. Is somebody here to speak on behalf of this event?
Good evening, Councilman. How are you?
Good, thank you. Just please state your name.
Amy Gates. I'm with Habitat for Humanity of West Bay and Northern Rhode Island.
Welcome.
Good to see you all again for the second time.
Tell us a little bit about the event and how you fared last year.
We fared very well, actually, considering the weather wasn't on our side, but it was the first one that we ever did. We had 86 vehicles, 36 Jeeps, and about 42 motorcycles. It's really a one-of-a-kind type of a run. Normally, you just see a motorcycle run, but you don't combine, you don't see Jeeps and motorcycles together at the same time. So everyone had a blast. We raised over $16,000 for the first time ever. So we're doing it again and following the same protocol as last year. Hopefully, we're going to get over 100 vehicles this time. Is this too loud or?
Yeah, I don't know. Beck.
Am I too close? Too far?
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? All right.
Here goes one of us.
Okay. So I had submitted the certificate with for the same amount that I did last year. And if there's any objections to that, I can certainly get a different one. So I think last year it was on the application, it's for $2 million and for liability, and it was approved for $1 million liability. Given that we were really going through 138 for about 10 minutes, which represents about 10 miles of our 68-mile loop out to the Beavertail Lighthouse.
Do you have like a home base for the event? Is that Beavertail Lighthouse?
No, it's going to start and end at Dan's Place
Okay,
in West Greenwich, and we're doing a big loop all the way down here,
great.
138, and then up through North Kingstown, 102, and back to Dan's.
My son is obsessed with Jeeps right now, so I'm sure we'd love to watch that go through town.
Yeah,
Sounds like a wonderful event.
it is. It was really cool.
How does someone get involved?
Feel free to give me a call. You guys have my contact information. We're always looking for volunteers, even just to help us build our homes. And this particular run is to create awareness for our Veteran Build program, which provides for critical home repairs for our senior vets who can't afford to do those repairs themselves, and they're in an unsafe situation. It also creates awareness for volunteer opportunities for our veterans coming back from overseas to help them reintegrate back into society. What better way to do that by putting their skills to use and working along people in their neighborhood and reacclimating themselves. And then, of course, they have the opportunity to qualify for a zero interest rate mortgage for 30 years, which, because we're subject to HUD guidelines, everybody has to go through an approval process for that.
Motion to approve item 6C.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Seeing no opposition, good luck.
Thank you, Councilman. Have a good night.
6B.
6B.
I amend that motion.
Moving on to item number 6C, which is also a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct a portion of the Ride Round Roadie ride in South Kingstown on July 29th of this year at 7 a.m. to Life Cycle, Inc., subject to an execution again of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town, issuance of a certificate of insurance naming the town as the additional insured for the event, and of course the finance being sent to the finance director and approved by Rhode Island DOT. Proceeds will benefit cancer research. Matthew Luongo is the event manager. Is somebody here to speak on behalf of this event?
Good evening. I'm Matt Luongo. I'm the event director for Ride Round Roadie. So Ride Round Roadie is an annual bike-a-thon that raises money for local cancer treatment and clinical research here in the state. This is our 10th annual ride. So far we've raised about $600,000 lifetime. We're hoping that this year pushes us into the $750,000 range, but we'll see about that. So this is, like I said, this is our 10th year. This would be our 4th consecutive year in South County, 3rd consecutive year starting and finishing at the Farmer's Daughter on 138.
Do you have a website you can go on for more information?
You can go to Lifecycle Inc. Or rrroadie.org.
Great.
There are 15, 40, and 80-mile routes. We stagger the starts so that not everybody is going through town at the exact same time. Depending on which option you pick, you're coming from Farmer's Daughter and through Wakefield. The farthest routes can go into Charleston, Hopkinton, Richmond, North Kingstown, Exeter, and the 15 kind of mostly stays local.
Okay, well, finally, I've been waiting to do this. Motion to approve item 6C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Best of
Good luck.
luck to you.
Thank you.
This brings us to item 7A, which is a public hearing to consider a proposed sidewalk snow removal policy and proposed amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 16, entitled Streets and Sidewalks, Article 1, in general pertaining to the removal of snow and ice from sidewalks. There is an exhibit attached to the agendas for those of you who have that, but since this is a public hearing, we can, if anybody would like to come up to speak to this, I would ask that you come to the podium and state your name. Dale, did you have?
There's a communication from the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee recommending approval of the proposed ordinance and proposing a few other recommendations also.
Would anybody like to come up and speak?
Could we first maybe have somebody give an overview from?
I'd be happy to provide a quick overview. The ordinance basically has four components to it. The first is the requirement that private residents who live adjacent to a sidewalk within 12 hours after the cessation of a storm or 12 hours after the formation of ice clear the sidewalks adjacent to their property of the snow or ice. That's the basic requirement of the ordinance. The second piece of the ordinance is that it levies penalties. There are 3 stages of penalty for a first offense. There would be a warning. The owner who did not clear snow or ice from his or her sidewalk would be given a warning, told that, there is an ordinance that you're supposed to be clearing the snow and ice from your property and you didn't do so. If that happens a second time, then there would be a $100 up to $100 fine, and a third offense would be up to a $175 fine. There is a provision, the next element of the ordinance is an exemption provision which allows the town to establish a procedure for those over the age of 62 or those who are physically impaired to seek an exemption from the snow removal ordinance, and once they're on the exemption list, they would no longer be required to remove snow or ice from the sidewalks adjacent to their property. And then the second to last major component is a provision that says the town, which has had a historic list of priority sidewalks. Those are sidewalks adjacent to schools, sidewalks that are walking paths to and from public schools in particular, would be cleared by the town if those are not cleared within 24 hours after the cessation of the snow or the formation of the ice. The town would then be able to go to the property owners who live adjacent to the sidewalks and say, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. We're going to make you pay for the snow removal that we, the town, have done. That fine or that fee would be a credit against the fine. So let's say it cost $50 for the town to remove the snow. The penalty for this second-time offender would be $100. They'd have to pay the $50 for the snow removal and $50 in the fine. And then the last provision of the ordinance is one that would levy a heavy fine for those who are actually depositing snow on public sidewalks. We've seen this around town in a couple of instances where either snow removal companies or commercial organizations will simply push the snow from their parking lots onto the public sidewalk or from a private driveway onto the sidewalk across the street or something like that. This last provision would prohibit that activity and would levy a fine of up to $500 for each of those offenses.
What if it's the state that's putting the snow on the sidewalk?
Our ability to find the state is somewhat constrained.
Yeah, very. That doesn't mean we can't.
Okay.
We could run a tab for him.
I had a question about, in the definitions, Section 16-3, penalty violation of Section 16-2. Under Section B, it says any owner who is a natural person. I'm just wondering the verbiage on that. What,
I think that would be like, are you talking about like an LLC, or is that a natural?
A natural person is just that, a real person,
Right.
not a corporation, not a limited liability company.
Okay.
okay. And I had a couple other questions, or did you want to invite the public up before I ask my questions? Whatever you want.
You can ask your questions.
Okay. I liked how we included in there that the town was willing to provide sand to people, and then it also said something about allowing people to deposit their snow at our Department of Public Works. I'm concerned about the things that people use to treat snow and ice, and being able to deposit that in our town facility and how we dispose of it. How do we control, what's contained within the snow and whether or not that would pollute the waters?
It's actually an interesting question. This is current policy in South Kingstown. We currently make sand available to people who need to put sand down. And we do in extraordinary circumstances if there's no place to put it except snow at the town garage. I'm not aware of any instance where the question of what's in the snow has come up. John?
So on those rare occasions where we have to haul snow, the highway garage is the depository. We used to put it at Marina Park, but DEM sends all our communities friendly notices and before the winter season comes saying you can't deposit snow in either rivers or areas that would be receiving water. So that's where we do take the snow right now.
Okay.
But in terms of contaminated snow from others, the question hasn't arisen.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's why DEM, they don't want it near a river by virtue that it's got road salt in it, sand, that type of debris that's on any road. That's why they want it in an area that's not in close proximity to a wetland or a water body.
Also specified in this ordinance is that the sidewalks must be treated for ice, and I worry about, like for example, I have dogs, so people always look for pet-friendly, salt because they worry that an animal is going to walk across it or it could get on your skin and be an irritant. I mean, do other municipalities have any requirements or recommendations for people on those things?
So again, I mean, even if you put sand down, I think the goal is if people can get the snow and ice, off within 12 hours, you're not going to have the icing condition. It's only when people are walking on it and pack it down. So, hopefully that the de-icing is not going to be really a problem, but, it's something we'll have to address.
And then how do we pick how this is enforced? Do we have somebody going around and looking, or is this on a complaint basis that it would be enforced?
Go ahead.
There's two things I want to backtrack just a second and point out that the ordinance does not create a right to deposit snow at the town garage. It's a statement of policy that was included in the ordinance, but that policy is just that. It's not part of the ordinance. It's not one of the numbered sections.
Right.
The ordinance with regard to the treatment of ice does require non-toxic treatments. It does require that you use something that is not going to be injurious to the environment, and implicit in that, I would suggest, is pets. We have not got a list. There are lists out there. They're not put into the ordinance itself.
So, I mean, road salt and calcium chloride are traditional products you can buy at, well, it used to be Benny's, but not a hardware store.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
On the enforcement question, the way that this probably ends up being enforced is that remember, the underlying problem that we're trying to address is the utilization of an overstretched staff at the highway division. When we get big storm events, They are out plowing the roads for sometimes 2 days straight, and they're just exhausted. We need to get them off the road. We need to get them home. They need to sleep. And at that point, those sidewalks, if the expectation is that the town will clear them, are not being cleared. If we have a melt and a freeze, it becomes real hard to clear those sidewalks at that point. The idea is that if we get the public out there as the first line of defense, we get the snow off and that problem goes away. We know, however, that we're not going to see all of the priority sidewalks, all of the sidewalks that are between the homes and the schools cleared. We know we're going to have to get out there. But if we have 60%, 80%, 20% of the sidewalks cleared by citizens, then the job is easier and the danger to the public is reduced. So the enforcement is likely to be the follow-through by the Public Works Department saying, this property didn't do what they were supposed to do, and the police going out and issuing a ticket at that point.
So my concern with that is that only the people who live on that loop would be the ones that were really being affected by the fines, because it's not like we would be policing other areas where, there isn't a loop or there isn't a sidewalk that Public Works would necessarily be looking at to clear.
That's correct. I mean, the built into this is the assumption that what has evolved in South Kingstown, in Wakefield and Peacedale to some extent, Wakefield and Peacedale, is the sort of natural desire for snow removal in the community that we're seeing in the priority list that we've put on maps, the sidewalks that folks really think need to be cleared. If that turns out to be wrong, the ordinance would allow the Director of Public Works to modify the priority list on an annual basis. The ordinance calls for the publication of that priority list. And where people think they've got a problem that needs to be addressed, we have the ability to modify the list and amend the enforcement strategy as expectations in the community change and as usage of the sidewalks in the community change.
And my final question, just back to the policy that says the town will provide free sand and a free snow disposal area at the town garage located at Asa Pond Road. Would that also apply to large businesses, say for?
The sand that we provide is for residents. We have not provided sand for commercial enterprises in the past.
And what about the snow disposal too? Is that also for?
I think, and again, I think you're only going to see, trucking of snow when we have these, cataclysmic type events, when we do Main Street. Mm-hmm. We don't typically truck snow unless, we have 3 feet of snow on the sidewalk. So that's a pretty rare anomaly, and I think we'll have to, take a look and see how much real estate we have up there if we have that type of interest from businesses or property owners.
Okay.
John, one of the things that came up in the work session that we had on this was near the end of the ordinance is the not depositing snow from private property onto the town property. And I think I remember hearing that was a big challenge to town staff to get the sidewalks cleared the next day.
Yeah.
That was...
Yeah, that section of the ordinance, I think, probably should have been done years ago.
Right.
And I don't want to name any businesses, but there are a lot where their parking lots abut the sidewalk, and they just push onto the sidewalk. That's a problem.
Yep. No,
I think that is well needed.
Having heard that at our work session, I would, and I'm glad to hear from, more of the public before we make any decision, but I'm glad to sort of enact that part of the ordinance. I'd be much more prefer to do this maybe piecemeal and try that step before we implement, fines and penalties and this extra burden on property owners that haven't had that burden. But I think I'd be a little more interested in doing this a piece at a time rather than all at once. But
I feel like if it was my property, either if it's my residence or my business, that it's my responsibility to make sure that it's cleared in front of my property because it's part of being a good neighbor, but I also understand that some people can't do it. But there's plenty of people out there that can, that sometimes don't.
And sometimes it's timing for them, right? The storm ends an hour after they've left for work, and they've got a tight window.
And the people who don't live here year-round, I wonder about them, or people who rent their properties that might not necessarily have a policy. I mean, I agree with Joe about the blocking or depositing snow on sidewalk just seems like common sense. I would think that policy.
It is common sense, but it gets done. I see it.
Right. Oh, I know. I'm saying I support that part
Yeah.
politically, but I just have some reservations about the rest of it.
Yeah, and then, like to Brian's point and what was discussed here, people who don't live here year-round, who perhaps go to Florida in the winter, and they might have a property that, they're not around, but they would have to make those arrangements, is the assumption, to get those sidewalks taken care of while they're away.
Well, we're not inventing the wheel here. This is based, of course, off of other ordinances that exist around the state, I imagine. Do we know about the enforcement in those areas, how onerous it is on?
I think, when it comes up every winter, you read the paper, Providence, Cranston, they all struggle with enforcement. I think that's my concern is somebody's on vacation, well, I didn't know. So, not to say we can't send somebody a violation or a warning, but, I think we're going to hear a number of excuses why people can't or weren't able to get the sidewalk cleared. But, nothing that other communities haven't dealt with also.
I think I remember during our work session, we discussed that other municipalities also don't commit to necessarily clearing the kind of loop that we have, whereas we've made that long-term commitment to doing that. I just worry that it disproportionately affects those people who live in that loop. I want them all to clear their sidewalk, but I'm just concerned that the people who live there are going to cry foul that other people who have sidewalks that don't live in the loop are not going to get penalized.
So, for example, like High Street, we do one side, we don't do the other.
Right, exactly.
So, if that's is the priority side, we're going to be one side or both sides. If it's not both, then people on the side that have it done say, I think those are some of the things that we'd have to work our way through if the council chose to pass the ordinance.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I am very familiar with a similar ordinance in the town of Barrington, for instance. It took them a long time to get to that point. It's the same exact issue about children walking along County Road and not being able to get to the school. That was exactly what the issue was. Yep. And so the enforcement is a very tiny part of all of this, meaning education is really big. As Rob said earlier, once you have it in place, the expectation is that most people will do the right thing, and it's only when you have repeated violators that you ever go to the point of fines, etc. Just having a police officer come by and speak to you is usually enough. I have not found, in my experience, at least with Barrington, I think Bristol has it too, that this is a big deal. It really is saying, to be a citizen of this community, there's certain things you should do. And by the way, if you don't have the ability to do so, seek an exemption and we'll take care of it. So there's, to my knowledge, in those communities that I'm familiar with, there's not been a court case or anything like that. So again, education, asking people to do the right thing. But if you don't have if you don't set the expectation in the first place, then nothing will be done. Now, whether you do it in phases or whatever, but it has not been an issue in other communities that I know of.
And what would the plan be for education? Does the town have any, or staff have any ideas about how we would sort of disseminate this information?
My thoughts are if the council chose to pass it, would be anybody who butts a sidewalk, we send them a letter saying, we want to let you know, on this date, the council passed this ordinance, the expectation is when it snows this morning, you need to get your sidewalk cleared within 12 hours. I think we do that well in advance.
Okay. So
people have noticed that there's an expectation when they have snow.
I don't know what the expense is, but I do know in the postcard that was sent out, it was orange. It was not huge, but because it was orange, came in my mail, and it stood out, you know, and that was in terms of the road construction there where I live. But perhaps, you know, qualifying that expense, something could be sent out to the homeowners, because, I don't know, that was bright as the day. I mean, it stood right out, so something like that, if it's, you know, not cost prohibitive, might be something that could be sent out.
So I would make one other note, just because it's been part of the discussion in Town Hall and it's been part of the workshop. The equity question actually splits both ways. As it is right now, we shovel the sidewalk for half of High Street and not the other half.
Right.
And everybody's paying for that half that we do shovel, not just the folks who are benefiting from it.
There was one thing that wasn't included in here that I would like to see included in here, and that's clearing in front of fire hydrants. If you have a fire hydrant, you know, in front of your property or on the corner of it, they should clear that as well. I think that that's important to include in here.
Good. If there's no other comments here at the table, this is the opportunity for the public to get up to voice to us your comments regarding this public hearing. I'd ask you to do so by coming to the podium and state your name, and we'd love to hear from you.
About the fire hydrant thing, is there not already a rule that people are supposed to?
No, there's no rule.
Nope.
What happens is the volunteers will go out, and the volunteer fire department on a night of training, go out and shovel the fire hydrants to make sure that they have access to them.
And other towns, a lot of times, the paid fire departments just ride around on their shift and clear them.
Right.
Hey there, Bob Hackey. I used to live right next to South County Hospital, and I fully support the ordinance. I think it's a great idea. But just as a thought question, the trucks, the plows, would routinely push the snow up onto the sidewalk, and these are the town plows. And so I could clear my sidewalk down to almost the road, but then there would be like a 3 to 4 foot pile, which I had a snowblower, but I could never get through it. I would be too young to qualify for the exemption. I'm not asking you to throw the baby out with the bathwater here, but I do think if there's a way to plow so that you did not have those massive deposits up on the ends of the sidewalks, it would be a lot easier for the homeowners to comply. Because physically, I would try to do it, but I physically could not. So I would hate to see somebody get, I don't live there anymore, so it doesn't affect me directly now, but I would hate to see somebody get fined for something that was truly beyond their control and was not of their doing. So I think it's a great idea to have people, support the notion of personal responsibility for your property. But I think there's got to be some way to kind of deal with those extenuating circumstances that were probably unusual. But I'd hate, I know personally I would have been freaked out if a police officer came and, lectured me for something that I thought was really beyond my control. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Robert, when it says clearing the sidewalk, does that mean clearing a path or clearing the entire sidewalk?
Typically, these are interpreted as a path. It
Correct.
doesn't require that, the sidewalk be cleared from side to side, but
I just wanted to make
it's
sure.
made safe for pedestrian
Right,
traffic.
to pass without falling and, yeah.
Anybody else like to come up to the podium? Any further discussion here at the table? Oh, come on up.
Someone's coming up.
Hi, I'm Sean Dibler, 71 Jennifer Drive. I'm not in favor of this. It just places an added burden for people. For my personal situation is I work at the University of Rhode Island, and after a snowstorm, most of the crews go home, and then I stay and clean up after they've gone home like the town does. So I can work 10 to 15, 20 hours a shift. So at that point, I wouldn't have the ability to get home in time before this, fine could occur for me. That's it.
Would that be something that would qualify someone for an exemption, do you think?
The ordinance as written would allow anyone to apply for an exemption and make their case. The ordinance does speak to disability, physical inability to do the removal, or age. That doesn't mean that a waiver couldn't be based on some other circumstance, but it's not built into the ordinance directly. There's nothing in the ordinance that implies that social circumstances would be the basis for a waiver. However, it could be. It doesn't imply that it can't be.
Yeah, to that point, think of like our first responders who are working 12 or 24-hour shifts who, they just wouldn't be able to go home in that time. I was home plenty of times during snowstorms where my husband was gone for, 2 days, and me and the kids out there shoveling, and you get it done, but also I think there should be consideration for situations like that.
So again, the ordinance speaks to two particular, sort of slam dunks, if you will, on the exemption. The one is age, and the other is physical inability to remove snow. It does not preclude other circumstances. It doesn't speak to them specifically, but it doesn't preclude them. And this ordinance was designed to be sort of an opportunity to sort of ease into this whole area. This is something that Wakefield and South Kingstown have not done before. We've tried to make sure that there is flexibility, that there's discretion, that the Director of Public Services can exercise here. We're trying to design a system that will grow to fit the needs of the community. We didn't want to come in and say, from now on, everybody's got to remove their snow, and we're going to start slapping fines on everybody. We wanted to make sure that there were warnings, that there was an understanding of the policy, that we had in the ordinance the opportunity for people to seek a waiver. We wanted to make sure that we built in the unforeseen, or an ability to respond to the unforeseen circumstances. The first responders is a great example. That's the kind of thing that if somebody came to us and said, I need an exemption because I work, a 48-hour shift just like your road crew, well, yeah, that's something we ought to be taking into consideration. It's also different for us, and our ordinance as drafted here is different than the ordinances in most other municipalities. We're not completely unique, but the idea of these priority sidewalks is unique to the history of this community. And so, the ability to give an exemption or a waiver when it's not that priority section of sidewalk, the discretion is there. I think that we could do the right thing under the circumstances.
Questions or comments from the audience?
Hi, my name is Stephen Licht. I just wanted to, in talking about the equity issue, it occurs to me that this is one of those unlikely ordinances where all the benefits accrue to the people who bear the burden. If you have a sidewalk, you have the benefit of having a sidewalk, but you also have the burden of clearing that sidewalk. So this is not a case where the town is forcing people to clear other people's sidewalks or in a different part of town. So you really, it does, I want to speak unequivocally in support of this, because I haven't heard that yet from the audience. And in part because it seems like the people bearing the burden are the ones who get the benefit of it as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Make a motion, we close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any oppositions? Okay, public hearing is now closed. As far as the council goes, do we want to make a decision tonight on item number 7A?
I'd like to make a decision. I'm in full support of the ordinance. I think that we can work through any changes that we need to make potentially with things that come up, like first responders or other situations that would warrant an exemption.
We have motion.
And to that point, I've just been doodling a little here. I think under definitions, you'd add or employment-related hardship. So it would say financial, age, or employment-related hardship. You could add that. And a minor point, it says determination exception. That really should say determination exemption.
If I wanted to add the bit about the fire hydrants, would we have to re-advertise, or is that something that we could just amend?
I think with fire hydrants, that's sort of a very substantive addition. I would be more comfortable if we amended it at a future point. And you might want to get some input from the volunteer fire companies on that, et cetera. So, just in terms of procedure, I think I interrupted you, Brian.
No, it's okay.
There's a motion.
Yeah.
Maybe we should get a second.
But even with the fire hydrants, I think we don't own the fire hydrants, the water department does, right?
I think we pay.
Yeah, it's a lease for each fire hydrant.
So my understanding is, Brian, was that a motion?
No, it was just my comment. Well, I thought we were open for comment.
The motion is to close the public hearing.
And that's
We already
all
did
done.
that. That happened.
So now we need a motion to approve or carry forward item 7A.
I'll make a motion that we approve item 7A.
I'll second with
The amendment.
just a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You want to add those amendments?
You can add them if you want. Oh, the
So,
7A.
how about if we make your motion with the amendments?
Sure, okay.
Adding the employment hardship and changing exception to exemption. That'll be your motion.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve 7A with adding the employment as a possible hardship and changing, you say exception from exemption?
From exception to exemption.
From exception to exemption.
Second.
I just have a quick comment. I stated earlier I'd prefer to go at this a lot slower. I won't be voting for the ordinance. I would be in favor of, I believe it's section 16.5, which says you will not, it would be against the ordinance to dump snow on the town sidewalks. I would be much more in favor of just going at this a piece at a time. So I won't be supporting the ordinance.
I also am in support of the ordinance, but I would rather see us make some changes and amendments and see what that looks like before approving it as written. So I'm going to be voting no as well.
Okay, we have a motion at this point and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No?
So we have 3 approvals and 2 oppositions to item number 7A. Motion carries. Moving on to item number 8, which is communications. B is a resolutions adopted May 7th of this year by the Barrington Town Council to support Senate Bill S. 2331, an act relating to public utilities and carries, duties of utilities and carriers that would extend the cooperation requirement public utilities have by law with contractors involved in state construction projects to municipal, political subdivisions, and other quasi-government agencies, and in support of Senate Bill S. 2464, an act relating to criminal offenses, tobacco and nicotine products, children that would raise the legal minimum age of purchase of tobacco products and nicotine delivery systems from 18 to 21 received and placed on file. And how would the town council further direct?
The solicitor for Barrington.
I can answer your question about the second half of this.
Yeah, the act relating to public utilities and carriers, what was the reasoning? I mean, it seems like something we would want as a municipality to have better cooperation from public utilities, is it?
Yeah, that's all it is. That's, there are the issues of the pavement and the patching and all kinds of similar type issues. But the big one for them was the second half. They would like to see tobacco products, especially the smokeless tobacco, restricted to age 21 instead of 18. In fact, the town adopted an ordinance. It's been challenged in court by, as you can imagine, the purveyors of these products. And so, in addition to the ongoing court case, they've asked the legislature to change the age.
Is there a House version of that? Why is it just the Senate bill that they're supporting?
That I am not sure, I think the Senate version is the one that was first introduced. I'm sure there's a House counterpart. I'm not sure why you only received the Senate version. I know Senator Coyne and others introduced it.
So Senator Sosnowski was on there. Okay.
And how would council like to proceed?
I'd make a motion that we put item 8B on file.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition?
I'll say no.
Motion carries 4-1. Moving on to,
I'm sorry, Abel, can I ask, what would you prefer to see done?
I think we could send those resolutions to the State House. I mean, I'm in favor of both those bills, is what I'm saying, I guess. And so.
Sorry, just curious. Thanks.
moving on to item 8D is a resolution adopted May 14th by the Charlestown Town Council in support of the recommendations submitted by the Town of Gloucester to the Special Legislative Commission to study Low to Moderate Income Housing Act. It's received, and how would the council further direct?
I'll make a motion to place this on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions or abstentions? Seeing none, motion carries. Moving on to E is a communication dated May 8th from Jean Behe, submitting her resignation from the Affordable Housing Collaborative Committee. And it's received, placed on file, and the town council further directs.
I would make a motion that we accept her letter of resignation and send a letter of gratitude. And also, well, I'll just make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It looks like we have a number of applications for that position. If we could set up interviews soon. Yeah.
Sure. Moving on to F, which is a communication dated May 23rd from Andrew and Janet Skakowski, troop committee members inviting the town council to attend the Eagle Scout Court of Honor for the Boy Scout Troop 1 in Kingstown, which will be held on June 24th, and requesting from the town letters of congratulations. Placed on file, and how do we further direct?
I make a motion that we send along our letters of congratulations and put this item on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Still, they may want, I don't know if they asked in their correspondence, but a representative from the council, or perhaps a proclamation. It's right next door at the church, so just let me know if that's something that they're seeking. Thanks. Moving on to G, which is a resolution adopted again May 23rd by the town of Burrillville Town Council in support of House Bill H-8120 and Senate Bill S-2905, relating to the changes due to the Energy Facility Siting Act. We have received this, and how does the council further direct?
This is the legislation that would increase the size of the facility siting board. Is that correct? Does anybody? Yeah.
I say that, but it's not coming up.
It's not as easy as it looks.
Crashing the system everywhere.
Yeah, I would make a motion to submit a resolution in support of these pieces of legislation and in support of Burrillville's move to expand the Energy Facility Siting Board.
Do we have a second?
If,
I think I need a little bit more clarification.
yeah, so you might remember last year when we passed a resolution in support of Burrville and their fight against the power plant, the natural gas power plant up there. So I feel like this is in keeping with that previous vote, but also I think the Energy Facilities Siting Board has, at this point, 3 members, all appointed by the governor. This legislation would make it so that it's a little more accountable to municipalities, and it adds municipal interests to the board. So that's why I think it's important to give municipalities a little more say.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 9. This is comments from interested citizens. This is your time to come up to the podium again. Please state your name for the record. And any questions, comments, concerns, or other feedback you'd like to give the town council, this is now your time to do that.
Bob Hackey on the frequent flyer program here. Thank you for your time. I wanted to speak and encourage you to exercise caution with respect to endorsing the RIDE proposal where we are seeking funds for school improvements. I fully support the school improvements, but I do not support the closure of Wakefield Elementary School. And I think, first of all, I wanted to compliment you. I was really impressed to read in attachment B all of the communications by email that the council has received, and I was struck by how many of them have to do with community sentiment that is very clearly expressing a view that we need to tread warily here. I think there's some things we agree on. I think everyone realizes the high school needs improvement. I think everyone realizes, and there's really been no controversy about closing Curtis Corner, but we're talking about some major changes with our school district, and we want to move the 5th grade back to our elementary schools, which I think is a great idea. We want to move the pre-K into the elementary schools from where it has been, and it seems that we are rushing into this, and I think certainly on behalf of the downtown business community, which has expressed real concerns about this. Also, dozens of active and involved parents, many of whom are behind me here. If we are going to endorse a RIDE application, I urge you to exclude the closure of Wakefield School from that resolution. I think we need more time. And I think the optics of this are not great, that we are asking to borrow tens of millions of dollars at the same time we're closing a facility that's in the heart of town. And so I think we need to upgrade our school facilities. I fully support that. But I think you've been hearing on a pretty regular basis from a lot of really active and engaged people that they have fundamental concerns about the way the school committee has moved through this process. And I think the ball is now in your court, and we're kind of looking to you guys for leadership. I really implore you to kind of put the brakes on the campaign that we have to close Wakefield at the moment, because I think we need time to do this right. I'm not saying that Wakefield, 20 years from now will be the same facility in the same place it is today, but I think if we move too quickly, we run the risk of kind of having some real regret about the way this process was handled. Thanks for your consideration.
I don't want to take the thunder away from the town manager, but I think that would be something we had discussed in actually the work session he may touch upon on the town manager's report. We haven't even received anything from the school committee, so we have no idea what proposal is going to be out there and what they're going to send. So I don't want to say it's a moot point, because we all have our emotions about this whole situation. Everybody is very passionate about this. and I appreciate your concerns as well. I think that your voices have been heard through the emails we've received, both in favor of option B and, of course, in opposition of closing Wakefield. It's a very sentimental issue. But I'll let Rob speak to that a little bit further when the town manager's report comes into play, because we've received nothing as far as the right options from the school committee yet.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, April Tessier. I know it's kind of a moot point now talking about Wakefield closing, but I just wanted to check in with you all since the last meeting to find out if anyone had spoken with Seth Magaziner's office to discuss the bonding and how it's laid out. I happen to have their business card if somebody would like it, because I think that what this gentleman was just speaking to, the RIDE application, it doesn't matter if Wakefield is on there. It matters if Wakefield is on their closing, but it doesn't mean that that couldn't change later. We're going to miss the boat if we don't sign the RIDE application for all it's worth in the beginning. And I think Seth can speak to that better. So would somebody like this business card? Can I hand it to you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Jason Ralph, Wakefield. I wanted to echo what April said, that the information that Seth Magaziner provided was very instrumental in helping us understand that there's a difference between the application and the bonding, and that the state expects the bonding to be done in phases. They expect that as projects become necessary, we request bonds to pay for them. And it expects us to reassess enrollment statistics, enrollment projections, and birth rate projections and whatnot on a rolling basis, and make changes to the decision as it goes. What you're going to be asked to do is sign a letter of intent that we plan to move forward with the process. I also wanted to bring up a point that I haven't gotten a lot of clarity from, and it concerned me a little bit. The task force recommendations for funding the legacy plan options included a maintenance provision, and I don't know if anyone is familiar with that, town manager or town council, but the state is suggesting or recommending that we be mandated to pay 3% of replacement costs per year in maintenance.
So that buildings don't fall apart again.
Exactly. They also say that the penalty as far as losing state aid would be triggered if we don't spend 67% of that once every 3 years. I did the math because that's what I do. And it came out to, I believe our total replacement cost is somewhere in the range of $235 million. 3% of that is in the $5.3, $5.4 million range. And 67% of that is in the 3.57. I don't have these numbers, but somehow it's just the way my brain works. So it turns out, it works out that we would need to spend about $3.5 million once every 3 years, and we don't currently spend anywhere near that. I don't know the history of how strong the state deals with that mandate, but that's an increased mandate in the past. I'm not sure what the maintenance requirement was, but the threshold was 50%. And so that's something that needs to be thought of. The operational savings in option B could help to pay for some of that additional maintenance requirement that we may have to pay. I haven't seen that be kind of part of the discussion, so I didn't know if any of you had thought about that or had understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Jess Jeremiah. A couple of things. I was here at the pre-work session. I don't know if we're going to recap any of that, but it was mentioned that the plan was voted on as a locked-in place, if I'm remembering correctly, timeline. Is that what was said? Like we have to do certain things by 2022? We have to complete the plan?
Talking about the master plan that the school committee voted on. You were talking about their policies.
So 2022 is the date on the master plan that the school committee has put together that is the target, if you will, the date on which they are projecting the closure of Wakefield.
So when we saw that at the school committee meeting, they told us those were very soft and not at all hard line times. They were just a draft plan that was brought up. So I don't think that it's as rigid as that 2022. I think those timelines will come into place as the process moves forward.
I didn't mean to imply at any time that they were locked in, just that that was the timeline that they had identified.
Okay, and also that the vote cannot be undone. I think that was another part. Do you want to clarify that for people who weren't here, maybe?
No, that's actually my understanding. I've been told that the school committee's rules will not allow them to revisit the question of the master plan at this point.
So when we were at the meeting and they said that the timeline was soft, now they're saying it's not?
There's two elements to this, though. The one is the master plan that has been voted on, the legacy plan, and the other is an application for housing assistance from the state of Rhode Island. The application is separate from the plan that is the basis for that application.
Right.
You can have modifications. I mean, things change over time. But in terms of modifying their vote on the legacy plan, before August of 2018, my understanding, based on conversations I've had with folks at the school district, is that cannot happen.
No, I think you're correct on that from what I've heard as well. But the vote does not say that Wakefield Elementary has to be closed. So I just wanted to clarify that as well. Also, some people from the last meeting, and I know through email, have requested that there be a public forum with RIDE to explain some of the elements. I know we just heard April talk about Seth Magaziner coming down, and I'm wondering what the progress is on that.
So when we get to the manager's report, I'm going to explain to the council that my investigation into this leads me to believe that that isn't a role for the town or the town council at this point, that that's a role that would have to be initiated by the school district or the school committee.
Okay, it's very concerning because we read the same information. We're hearing, we call RIDE directly as a public, we get one piece of information, then we go to the school committee and we're getting another, so that's why we're appealing to this body as, you know, community forum. That's the conundrum we're in, because we are hearing a lot of different and misinterpreted information, and I probably, because written word is different than face-to-face where you can clarify questions. So I don't know if there's any way that you guys could look into that and make it so that the whole community is getting the same information at the same time.
So, Madam President, if I may, from my perspective, the fundamental problem.
I want to interrupt because now we're getting into a full-fledged Can we just have, all we need is a motion to add this discussion to the agenda, and then we'll be good with the open meetings law.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the fundamental problem from my perspective is this. We operate under a town charter that delegates responsibility for all things legislative to the town council, except those things that the charter specifically delegates to someone else. School administrative policy is wholly, completely, 100% under the town charter delegated to the school committee.
So in this case, because you're putting a bond on for referendum, I would think that there's a financial implication that involves you, which would involve you in this further.
So again, Madam President, if
Continue.
the regulations that RIDE has put in place would trump our ordinance, our charter. If RIDE has a regulation that says you have to bond, you have to do something in furtherance of a school committee, town council must be involved, then we must be involved. The town council must take action at that point. We're in a point in the process, however, where I don't think the regulations require town council or even authorize town council action above what the charter requires. There are 3 specific places in the RIDE regulations for housing aid assistance where town council engagement is referenced, specifically referenced. There may be other places where it's implied, but 3 places where it's expressly required. The authorization of a signature on a letter of intent or statement of interest, the designation of members on a school building committee, and the approval of a Stage 2 application. That approval comes much, much later, and we're not there yet.
So my concern is that they would move forward with a plan that would be very far along, and by the time they got information from you guys about what you would approve based on possible housing authority aid, and I know there's confusion around how many buildings need to be closed to get certain bonus points, and we've heard different information from RIDE than what was reported for school committee. So I would just be worried that this would go too far down the process for it to be able to be pulled back.
So again, the way I read the regulations are that they leave intact the prohibition built into the charter with regard to the letter of intent, or alternatively, the statement of interest. The regulation refers to it as both. And at that point, once the letter of intent has been submitted, it invites participation by the town council through its representatives on the school building committee, and invites participation directly by the town council on the review and approval of that Stage 2 application. It does not invite that participation at the letter of intent. That's the fundamental challenge.
So your involvement, what you may, after that time comes up, invite RIDE for a public forum.
I think that my view of it would be that the town council's involvement is defined by what the regulations say it is, because the general rule is school committee has 100% school administrative policy control.
But this isn't usurping their control, it's just an informational session.
I think that would have to be precipitated by the school committee rather than the council.
Well, what about, we're going to have, I know that, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Just a suggestion. I know we're talking about scheduling a work session with the school committee and us and the Wakefield Village Association and the chamber. Maybe we could invite them to something like that where, that way I would be available for any questions. If the school committee was amenable to such discussions.
So again, the distinction here is between all things legislative. Finances, clearly the town council's purview. The economic development of the community is clearly the town council's purview. What happens to school buildings after they're disposed of clearly is the town council's purview. What should we put in an application is clearly, under the charter, the school committee's purview, without any right of interference by anyone else. The only place where there is an authority granted to the town council to interfere or to be involved is the RIDE regulations, which say you get to appoint members to the school building committee and you get to approve or disapprove of the Stage 2 application.
So that would be the information you'd be requesting, I would think, is what kind of things would be advantageous to see in an application so that you would be ready to approve it, because I would want to see something that's ready to be approved so that we're not in a position where November comes and we have something that is not ready to be approved.
But the RIDE regulation gives that authority with regard to the Stage 2 application, which is not going to happen this year. The process is a Stage 1 process, which basically says, send us a letter of intent, which is the school district, the school committee's notification to the Department of Education that you'd like to apply for and that you plan to submit a formal application for funding assistance. As part of that application, send us a letter of intent or a statement of interest signed by the town so that they know that you're submitting this application, not that they've engaged in the content development, but that they know that you're making this application. Send us the names of the people who will be on the school building committee, and if we approve that, then you go on to the planning. Then you begin to develop your Stage 2 application, which sometime in months, maybe a year, is ready for a town council approval or disapproval.
Okay, I completely understand the letter of interest. I'm just going to say, at some point between now and then, maybe a public forum after that first thing comes out. So we're all kind of hearing the same information. It doesn't have to be this level of confusion that we've seen throughout the last few months. I also just want to reiterate that this is not a cent in rental. I know I heard that a couple times. It's also a fiscally responsible thing that we are actually looking at the full community fiscal responsibility as well, because closing an elementary school does burden the school committee to approve building on to other buildings, which are unnecessary at this time. Thank you.
Meg, can I just make a quick comment about something that Rob said? And that, I don't know if this might resonate with a couple of the people expressing some of their frustrations. For me, a lot of the confusion and the frustration comes from hearing that the town council obviously has power over, an economic impact on the community or a fiscal impact, the disposal of buildings, but we don't have control over how they fill out this application or what they apply for. But it feels sometimes like if that's in direct conflict, if that application feels like it's in conflict with some of the things that we do have control over, and yet we can't yield any of that power, it just feels almost like it's not genuine, to proceed. And I can see, to her point about the plans that they've committed to, this sort of master plan that they have over 5 years, it could be a long time before we get to phase 2 of this application. They can move forward with that, with their master plan that they have all along until we get to phase 2. And at that point, are there going to be things implemented that we can't sort of unring the bell for?
I appreciate the frustration there. I mean, that's frustrating. I do understand that. Again, though, the way that I read the interaction between the charter, which says school administrative policy is theirs 100%, and the RIDE regulation, which says even if it is theirs 100%, at this point in the process, you can get engaged. Now, on the question of whether the council could not sign a letter of intent for an economic reason, absolutely. You can decide not to authorize the signature on a letter of intent or a statement of interest. But it can't be because of the policy that the school committee is pursuing. It has to be because of the economic development implication or because of the non-compliance with the plan of conservation or the fact that we just don't want to bond money because the market's not good. All of those good and independent non-school policy reasons may be a reason for not signing a letter of intent. But you can't refuse to sign a letter of intent for a school policy reason.
Hi, Stacy Bazzioni. So I just have a question. You'd mentioned school administration. So it sounds to me more like the letter of intent is not a school administration issue, but more of a fiscal issue for the town, because the letter of intent implies that we will be seeking to bond a certain amount of money. Am I misinterpreting that? So
there is a fiscal implication of the school committee's policy to date. Okay. The policy is this 5-year legacy plan, and we're going to pursue this as the underlying theme or the underlying driving principles for the application. But the application, which would have financial commitments, hasn't been filed. There's nothing in a letter of intent that is committing the town to incur debt. There's nothing in a letter of intent that would commit the community to spending any particular way at this point. The application does those things, not the letter of intent. So while it has fiscal implications, its fiscal policy weight isn't very substantial. It doesn't have a lot of fiscal weight at this point.
But you haven't seen the letter of intent yet. Do you expect it to look a certain way and have certain language?
It's been described to me as simply, we want to apply for.
And that's it.
Yeah, it will not have, this is the full plan. It's not going to have a great deal of information about debt or expenditures or anything fiscal. It's simply, we intend to apply for aid and work with the Rhode Island Department of Education and the Town Council to develop an application that will be submitted to you at a future date.
So, and this may have been covered before and I just missed it or I don't understand it. I know that Phase 2 will have to be submitted, or Stage 2, I'm not sure what it's called, by February 1st of next year. And they did say at the school committee meeting, RGB was there, and they said it's better to get it in earlier. And so there was a concern that if the train leaves the station, so to speak, and then the bonding isn't approved, then what? But will the school committee not be spending money they don't have yet? Will they not be able to spend the funds until they receive the money through the bonding? Or is it possible that the train can leave the station and we don't get the bonding and the town doesn't approve it?
I'm not sure I understand.
If there's a bond, if there's, what is that called when you put it up on the ballot?
Referendum.
And what if it's not approved by the town, but the school department has already begun spending the money?
The school committee cannot spend money that it has not received and has not got authorization to expend in a total amount. We don't have, town council and town hall don't have control over shifting of funds within their budget, but they cannot expend funds that have not been appropriated to them.
And that won't happen until a referendum?
That won't happen until next year's budget cycle.
Okay.
And that won't happen until a referendum approving bonded debt makes money available for whatever purpose it would be designated for.
Okay.
So, no, the chances of the school committee expending monies toward a project without town, it's impossible. They can't do it.
Okay.
I mean, not substantial amounts. Again, they can shift funds within their own budget, so some expenditures.
Right, like the security upgrades that will happen this summer.
I was actually thinking they can hire consultants, they can do things in furtherance of a plan with current funds, but they're not going to be able to engage in a full-blown plan.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, again, I'm Stephen Licht. I have 2 points to make. The first is about the town council being proactive. And I understand that there are charter issues and legal issues and there are shoals and shallows and ways to get to where we need to go. But I will say first that I was disappointed when the town council and the school committee met in a work session or meeting at many months ago, and the town council missed its opportunity to state their case. What we heard was from several of you, well, it's option A would be preferred, but it's up to you. And I guess what I'd like to say is that what I've heard is that you can't comment, or you're not interested in commenting because you haven't seen anything from the school committee yet. But the truth of the matter is, the 5 of you, just like the rest of us in the audience here, have been following this process and understand what's coming up. So just as I hold you accountable for not stating clearly what your opinions were about this process when you had the chance before, understand that you will have to be held accountable. This is an electoral issue, that this is personally and as a council and as the leaders of this community and their neighbors, for simply waiting passively to see what comes down the pike. So what I would encourage you to do is to not take the attitude that, well, it's in the charter that we can't discuss it, or it's in the charter that we can't really talk to RIDE, or that we don't know yet, so we don't know what's coming. I think that it behooves you to be looking ahead and to be thinking now about how you're going to approach the upcoming discussions that we're going to have about the various stages of the applications. So I guess I would say don't hide behind the legal niceties and hide behind the fact that you haven't seen any official documents yet. You know what's coming. just as we all do. So I would suggest that if you have plans to make, that you go ahead and make them. Thank you.
Andrew Laurie, Wakefield. So just to get this all straight, town council, the school committee has to come up with a plan or a proposal, and you have to approve it, and you cannot approve it. I mean, they get asked for sharks with laser beams attached to their heads, and you're like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense, and you could say no. Right. And we have an election coming up in November, which, no, we don't. We do. Where we could vote on the school committee members. Correct?
Correct.
5 of them.
That's normal, though. Every election cycle is like that. so.
5.
Yeah.
Not 5. There's 7 members, 5 are up for election.
Cool. All right. So it's in your hands. Right? Rock and roll.
Thank you. Any more questions, comments, statements from the audience? Any more comments here at the table?
We have one more.
Hi, I'm Cadence Hansen, also from Wakefield. I have a question for the board and also for our town manager. My big question is, what is it that we potentially risk by considering not signing the letter of intent?
We risk not getting an application in and therefore not being eligible for state money.
Okay. So if we don't do that, we're going to miss a deadline. How's that pan out in the future?
We could potentially lose the funding that we receive, although it has been decreasing over years. I mean, when I first started, it was in the realm of $650,000. Potentially, our funding formula will dwindle down where we will have to potentially self-fund our schools and not get any state aid.
Doesn't look like that's something that our community can really do at this point, does it? Okay, well, I guess I would just like to say that I do hope that we move forward and sign the letter of intent, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. One last call for anybody who'd like to come up to speak. If there are no other discussion from the audience, I would move on to...
Meg, I have one thing to say before you move on to the town manager report. I just wanted to thank Terry and the parade committee and the team who did the Memorial Day parade this year. I think it was one of the best turnouts I have ever seen. And it might have been a combination of, the stars aligning with it not being really a beach day, but it didn't rain. And I think it was just crazy to see how many people were out. It was great. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And I also just wanted to make a note that I won't be at the next town council meeting on June 11th, but I will, I'll be out of town for about 3 weeks, but I'll have access to my email, certainly, and I'll be checking in. So if anybody has any thoughts and wants to get in touch, I'll try to get back to you right away.
Again, it was a perfect day for a parade, Terry. It was nice and cool. Yes.
Hi, Stacy Bozzioni again. I'm sorry, I was confused by that last answer that you gave about if you don't sign the letter of intent, about it affecting your state funding for the school department. I think it's the reimbursement, right? Not the funding. So you talked about how you were getting less and less funding. This is reimbursement. It's a totally different. And if you don't approve it, the school committee could resubmit it, and then it could be approved another time?
President, my understanding, again, is that the school committee's own rules prevent a revoting of the underlying master plan at this point. So if they can't change their underlying policy, and since there's nothing in the letter of intent that speaks to the consequences of a no vote really they're stuck. They're in a box because they can't change their underlying plan. They could change the punctuation, I think, in the letter of intent and send it back. But there's not a lot more there. They're not asking for a particular dollar amount. They're not proposing bonding at a particular rate. I just don't know what they would do with that.
Okay.
I will say, Madam President, I did meet with the school superintendent, and her assertion is that if the letter of intent is not signed, this project is dead. That's her assertion.
Thank you.
I understand it that they cannot re-vote the same vote. I do not think it's against their rules. They've talked about proposing a new vote on the facility plan.
I will say, I've spent a week trying to make sure I understand the rules on this side of the House. I don't know the rules well enough on
So
that.
I do not think that it's dead in the water if you don't sign a letter of intent, because a new vote can come up. They have made that clear throughout meetings I've been to.
I just have a quick question. At what juncture would we have the first opportunity to take this to a bond? If this is going to go to a referendum to approve the bonding, what's the time frame for that? What's the earliest that could be?
I don't anticipate it would be 2020. 2020, I would anticipate it would be.
And it would be, is the bonding usually part of a regular election cycle? Like when other things,
Yes.
it's not a special election,
No.
right? Okay. Thank you.
2019, November. I saw that on a timetable.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
So again, this is one of those scheduling things that needs to be worked out.
It's all part of the time horizon, right, which until things get started. Shall we move on to the town manager's report?
Well, you've got most of it there, in a good chunk. I will pull up the flag report, though, and make a quick report on sort of state of things around Town Hall and beyond. If I can, my computer's frozen again. The reds, and I'm going to just focus on our reds this week. The reds are really budget items. Admin Services is reporting a red largely because we're in contract negotiations. In fact, we're going to go into executive session to talk about one of those tentative agreements with one of the unions tonight. Contract negotiations are putting us above the 2% that we had budgeted for this year for pay increases. We're not seeing 2% increases in other communities around the state, and there's a number of factors that are driving us higher than the 2%, but it does mean that we are running into a budget issue with regard to those, so far, two unions that we're negotiating with. Building and zoning, budget here is being driven by a labor observation. The new building official came in and noted that we do not have a mechanical and plumbing inspector who's certified in those two disciplines. We've been using other staff, and we do need to go out and find a certified mechanical and plumbing inspector. We've got a per diem advertisement on the street, is that right? That's right. So we should resolve the issue of having the right staff in the right place. Unfortunately, it was not budgeted for, so we're going to see red there for a while until we figure out how to adjust things. EMS, as we've discussed for several weeks now, it is again staffing, and it's related to a budget item because of overtime for staff. We are now short 4 paramedics, and hopefully tonight we will take some steps toward resolving that. But it's definitely been a major strain on staff, and has definitely had implications for the overtime budget over at the Emergency Medical Services Division. Staffing and planning is a comp time issue this week. We had a large number of folks who work, we have a large number of folks in planning who work night meetings. They have, what is it, Chelsea, 7 or 9? 9 committees that the planning staffs for evening meetings, and each of those evening meetings means the accrual of comp time, and that means that they're not there during regular business hours. So that challenge has been big this week. And public safety communication staffing is related to the vacation time of the year and just trying to make adjustments. Budget and staffing are red. We had quite a bit of good news this week, good stories. Planning, for example, had their story about the scenic roadway designation of Route 1 come up. We had a number of good stories about EMS and a number of good stories about the rec department's services and activities. So it's been a good week in terms of news, tough week on staffing and budget. The clerk has introduced a new color this week. You see that? We've got sort of a good news, bad news story going on there.
Orange.
Some very good complimentary news, but also tough stuff. And that's my report.
Rob, I just had a question following up. I don't want it to fall off your radar, the work session that we promised those groups about with the school committee.
Yep, we've been looking to June, and we're still on track.
Yeah.
We've just had so many work sessions coming up. As you know, what we're calling the mega meeting for the plastic bag ordinance this Thursday has been a long time coming. It's been hard to schedule, coordinate everybody's schedule and get everybody who's interested in attending that meeting in the room. We are anticipating a fairly large meeting. As you know, you've got the sustainability, the economic development, and the conservation commission in that work session with you, and we've had a lot of interest from community groups. We're anticipating a large number of community groups that are hoping to come in and make brief presentations before the meat of the work session begins. So it's been a tough one to coordinate, and frankly, it's taken a lot of our energy just to build that one.
I just know people from the chamber and the merchant group there have all constantly asked me when we're going to schedule that, and I've told them, we've got a lot on our calendars, but just want to make sure I put it on your radar again.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. The floor is yours.
Just quickly, as we all know, the interplay between the town council and its powers and the school committee and its powers and the charter, RIDE, state delegation of authority to school committees to do what the state under our Constitution needs to do is challenging, to say the least. And I just want to let you know that Rob has become an expert in this area, and that I support what he's been saying in terms of this difficult issue of the letter of intent or letter of interest and what type of input you all have. And I've obviously been going over all the emails back and forth between all of you, listening to what he's saying. And I didn't interrupt because you're doing a great job, but I just want to let you know from a legal perspective, this is not easy. And Rob's done a great job at trying to get his arms around it for you. Other than that, unless there are questions.
How's the purchase and sales coming with Mary Carpenter's?
So the latest on the purchase and sales is that we made a number of minor revisions. We sent it back to Kevin Finnegan's attorney, Bill Landry, about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, still waiting for a response. However, in the meantime, the Rhode Island Department of Transportation has pointed out that before we can sell this property to Kevin, that we need to put it out to bid, so to speak, so that anyone who wants the right to purchase it, has that right. And the reason for that is that the town used federal monies to purchase it in the first place. So now if we're going to sell it, now, as a practical matter, I'm not sure why anyone else other than the neighbor would have, meaning Kevin, would have any interest in this thin piece of property that abuts his property. I've informed his attorney of this, but I've never heard back. That aside, I've never heard back on the P&S with all the changes that I think we've all agreed to. So it's the ongoing saga, but and I don't see this as something that is not that's going to hold things up in the sense that we can sign the purchase and sales agreement.
Mm-hmm.
It's just subject to going out to bid, just like it's subject to an appraisal, just like it's subject to entering into all the easement agreements. It won't, assuming they're ready to sign the sales agreement and you're ready to sign it, we can sign that. So, just waiting.
Thank you.
No appointments this evening?
I don't think so.
No? Okay, seeing no appointments. Moving on to item number 14, new business. This is item B, a resolution authorizing an award of bid to East Winds Dry Cleaners in East Greenwich for dry cleaning and laundry services at unit prices bid from July 1st of this year through June 30th of 2019, with the option to extend one additional year through June 30th, 2020, inclusive if mutually agreeable to both parties. And this is described in a memorandum from the police chief to the town manager on May 22nd of this year.
Motion to approve item 14B is presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any oppositions? Motion carries. Moving on to E, which is a resolution authorizing an award of contract to Southern Rhode Island newspapers, DBA, the Narragansett Times, located on Main Street in Wakefield, for municipal advertising services starting July 1st of this year through June 30th of 2020, with an option to extend for 2 additional years at unit prices bid and in accordance with all bidding specifications. And this is described in a memorandum from the town clerk to the town manager on May 16th for municipal advertising services.
Motion to approve item 14E is presented.
Second with a comment. I just appreciate the sort of negotiation you did to get the prices down on the advertising. I had some little sticker shock when I saw that, but I think you got it down to at least a reasonable price from where it was, and I appreciate it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. Moving on to F, which is a resolution regarding the town's lease of South Road Elementary School, as follows. Whereas the South Kingstown School District has had custody and control over certain town-owned building known as South Road Elementary School. Whereas the South Kingstown School District has previously leased a portion of said building to the Village Co-op Nursery School. Whereas on March 22, 2018, the South Kingstown School District published a request for proposals seeking proposals from parties that may be interested in leasing all or portions of South Road Elementary School starting in July of 2018. Whereas the district March 22nd request for proposals was posted to the municipal vendor bidding and notification system and was otherwise properly posted in according to all applicable state and local procurement rules. Whereas bid opening related to SRES request for proposals was held on Friday, April 6th of this year. After the April 6th bid opening, South Kingstown School District determined that it will no longer use any portion of the said building for public school purposes. So whereas after April 6th, the town accepted custody and control of South Road Elementary School. The South Kingstown Finance Department has reviewed the request for proposals and the proposals submitted in response to the request. Now therefore be it resolved by the Town Council of the Town of South Kingstown that the town manager is authorized and directed to proceed as if the request for proposals published by the South Kingstown School District had been published by the South Kingstown Department of Finance.
Motion to approve item 14F.
Second.
I have,
All those
I have a comment. In the memorandum attached to that, it said that reference seeking proposals for a building utilization lease that would be harmonious with its construction as a school. I'm just wondering, is there any deed restrictions on that property, or can it be rented out for anything?
There are no deed restrictions on that property.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any oppositions, abstentions, recusals? Seeing none, motion carries. Moving on to G is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a one-year lease with Village Cooperative Nursery School, 1157 South Road, for a portion of the South Road Elementary School building in the amount of $20,000 for a period beginning July 1st of 2018 through June 30th, 2019. And this has been further described in a memorandum from the finance director to the town manager on May 21st of this year.
Motion to approve item 14G.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Seeing no oppositions, motion carries. Moving on to H is a resolution inviting the South Kingstown Land Trust to submit a formal application for funding of an open space and conservation land acquisition and protection project relative to property identified as Assessors Plat 61 Lot 1 pursuant to the town's open space funding policy, and authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice a public hearing to consider any formal application submitted, and as further described in a memorandum from the town manager to the town council dated May 24th, South Kingstown Land Trust open space funding application.
Motion to approve item 14H.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Or is it okay?
If you
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. I know that I'm perfectly fine with going forward with the application. Just one thing I want to keep in mind is that I'm in full support of the land trust, but I'm also trying to balance the side of affordable housing. So I think we need to think about that when we're funding part of acquisition for open space.
And this is just, this is just the authorizing them to apply. This isn't a vote of support or approval or anything.
No, this is just
This resolution will do
submitted.
two things. It'll invite their application and authorize Dale to set a notice of public hearing on that application when it comes in.
Thank you.
I believe we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions? Seeing none, motion carries. Moving on to item number 15. Do we need a motion to go into closed executive session? Okay, I need to make a motion. I need to have somebody make a motion to go into closed executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4246-5 to discuss matters pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation for the firefighters, IAFF 3365.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We will now adjourn to executive session.
No.
Yes, I know.